Hi and welcome to the Grind Academy podcast. My name is Rob Patterson and I'm a former CEO from the hotel industry who turned the comfort of that life in to become an entrepreneur. Today I own several successful startups across various industries including retail, technology, property and lifestyle. If I can do all that coming from a tiny outback farming town in Australia, then anyone can do it. On my journey from becoming CEO of a large organisation to entrepreneurship, I became fascinated with what it takes to perform at your peak. Each week, I'm introducing some of the most inspiring and talented minds from sport, business, literature, and science to understand just what it takes. Thanks for joining the podcast. Now let's meet today's guest. In episode 5, I'm chatting with former professional Aussie rules footballer and current NFL punter for the Philadelphia Eagles, Arryn Siposs. Arryn had a 5-year career for the St Kilda Saints, a professional Aussie football team in Australia, from 2010 to 2015. When he joined the Saints, they were a dominant force in the league. However, after 3 coaches in 5 years, the wins dried up and the team eventually decided on a rebuild. That rebuild saw Arryn's career cut short in 2015 at only 22 years of age. Arryn spent 2 years away from the top league and during that time worked a few different jobs while studying to become a teacher, playing for Williamstown Football Club and coaching at Brighton Grammar. It was in 2017 he decided to give up the sport he'd grown up in completely to focus on making the NFL. Fast forward 6 years and Arryn has just had his first baby daughter and enjoyed a full season as starting punter for the Philadelphia Eagles. He played in a playoff match versus the greatest of all time, Tom Brady and his Buccaneers. Arryn talks about his never give up attitude and persistence that led to where he is today. Guys, you are not going to want to miss this story. What he did in the 6 years to reach the NFL is inspiring and a real life lesson, where he could easily have given up and played out his career as a teacher and as a coach. Arryn and his now wife decided to put everything into making the NFL and they took their shot. This was a super cool conversation. I could have talked for hours more. So stick around to the end and pick up some powerful lessons you can apply to your own life. This podcast is only good as the number of people who hear it. So please, if you like the podcast, share it on social media, tell your friends about it, and if you can, give me a review on Spotify or SoundCloud. The more reviews, the wider it gets exposure. So without further ado, let's meet Arryn. So Arryn, welcome to the Grind Academy and thanks for joining me on the show today.
Hey, no worries. Appreciate you having me on.
Arryn, I want to just kick off perhaps with family life because you've just had a new little daughter fairly recently and you're living over here in the US. Have you had a chance to get back to Australia in the last couple of years?
No, it's been quite tough actually with obviously all the COVID restrictions going on and things like that. It's been tough to get home, but actually plan on going home next month. So we've actually only got a couple more weeks left, which is nice, and then got a flight booked for the 1st of March to go home and finally see some family and obviously take our little one to meet a lot of people, which is very exciting, not only for us but for our family members too. So it's something to look forward to for sure.
So lots of Zoom calls and video, WhatsApp calls and things like that, right?
Yeah, exactly right. The old FaceTime, WhatsApp, you name it, Facebook Messenger. So it's all happening. But it's been good to be able to still keep in contact with everyone from back home.
Well, congrats on family life and a new daughter. She looks beautiful. I've seen her on Instagram. She's already a Insta hit.
Yeah, she's got her head popping up a little bit. So it's, get her out to, show the world. So it's good.
Nice. Let's dive right in. I want to kick off with intensity, and the reason I want to kick off with this, my first guest on this show, we lost you there. There we go. My first guest on this show was Mike Neal, who was a ex Super Bowl champion with the Green Bay Packers, and massively struck me was how intense his training was and his focus was, not just in sport but also carrying on after sport. And then actually yesterday I was reading Ray Lewis's book, and the rituals that he went through, 2 hours of meditation before a game. So I want to know, you've got a unique perspective of professional sport in the in Australia and professional sport here in the US. What's the contrast or comparisons that you see in terms of intensity levels?
Yeah, I think in ways that it's fairly similar, but obviously, they can be quite different. I think just the way people prepare for game time, I think, is very, very similar in terms of knowing who your opponent is, what you've got to do to prepare your body to be able to play. I think that's very, very similar in the way, obviously, the AFL and the NFL go about it. I think maybe what's different is maybe obviously the strategy behind it. The NFL is obviously so stop-start. You need to know so many different plays that are being called out. And if you get one of them wrong, they can be very crucial to how the game kind of pans out. Well, whereas I think maybe the AFL, obviously, you have your kind of 3 or 4 different modes or game plans that you have kind of going into the game, and you kind of chop and change between each one as the course of the game goes on. And as it's very fast paced, high intensity in terms of the running style and things like that. But I think that's kind of maybe the little bit of difference that I've found, is that every play is so crucial in the NFL, and every second kind of matters. And not saying the NFL doesn't, but I think you just kind of have a little bit of more time to kind of readjust and get yourself prepared. So it's been cool to kind of see both sides of it. Me personally, it's a lot different. My job over here is maybe a little bit more relaxed, and I don't necessarily have to do as much, but at the same time, it's still just as crucial. I get 3 or 4 opportunities a game to go out there and perform. And if I don't kind of do that, then I guess my job's really on the line. Whereas, I think in the AFL, you get your chance to kind of do it again. 1 second you could have a bad play, but literally the next you could do something really good, and everybody is getting around you and things like that. So I think that's kind of how I see it. And to be honest, I enjoy both sides of it. I love the fact that AFL side of things, you have to grind it out, and it's all about the mental game in terms of running as far as you can, long as you can, harder than your other opponent. Whereas the NFL, it's mentally to make sure you stay composed, being in the moment a lot more, I think. And also, again, each play matters. So you just have to kind of reset yourself, give yourself time to go again, and the opportunity's out there.
I guess tempo is a big difference between the two, isn't it? Because in the AFL, you've got that opportunity to control tempo, and the NFL, you probably don't have that.
Absolutely.
That probably, the fact that you might only have 3 or 4 plays, that must build more pressure in some sense, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, obviously, you want to go out there and perform every one. So, every single one counts, and maybe the pressure kind of gets to you. But I think the reason why we train is kind of for those moments. You put in the hours during the week and kick as many balls as possible and put yourself in kind of similar situations that you're going to have during the game time. So when you go out there for that moment, it doesn't really get to you. So I kind of just work on those, and sometimes if it doesn't work out, it's about how kind of you bounce back to in the next one, and just kind of go from there. So that's where the preparation and the training and that goes into it. So when that moment comes around, you're not really too worried about it, and you can just go out there and execute.
The intensity of media in Australia, particularly in Melbourne, that bubble of the AFL bubble, there's a high public appetite, and there's a hungry media ready to feed that appetite. How does that compare in terms of its intensity in the US or even college? I mean, you've probably got a similar interest in college, but it's a smaller campus. Is it more intense in the AFL or in Melbourne versus the US?
No, I think the media over here is pretty crazy compared to Australia, to be honest. People live in, not saying again, people don't live and breathe football over in Australia, but people live and breathe it here. And, Sports Centre is all over you. All these ESPN shows are talking about every little bit that can go wrong, or that teams haven't done well, or a player hasn't done well. And I just don't find that as much in the AFL. You're going to get that for some guys that are having form slumps or things are going on. But I think it's a total different beast, in the NFL and in college football, because of how passionate they are, if that's the right word, to be able to use. Just how passionate they are about their team and things like that. So I think it's probably a lot more brutal and a lot more a lot more intensity over here than probably what it is back home.
We watched. I don't know if you've seen The Last Dance. Have you seen the documentary?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I was all over it.
Yeah, great documentary. There was what you got to see in that documentary, or perhaps some of the aftermath of the documentary, was the intensity of Michael Jordan, like the absolute perfectionist when it came to his training and the time and effort that he put into it. And then you kind of get to see, well, not in the documentary, but in the aftermath of the documentary, you get to see Luke Longley's personality, which is he's got the same steely determination and he was super successful, but he wasn't outwardly as intense as Michael Jordan. So if Michael Jordan's a 10 on the intensity scale and Luke Longley's somewhere around a 5 or a 6, where do you sit on the intensity scale?
I mean, I would probably sit myself maybe a little bit in between. I'd say I'm probably a little bit more than Luke Longley, but certainly not as much as Jordan. So, I think my role, in some ways, I probably need to be a little bit more relaxed about it. I just find that there's not much point in terms of having all that kind of intensity when I'm so limited in what my role is anyway. While I still have intent on the way I practice and the way I want to go about things, and when I'm in training and everything like that, that's what I want to do. I certainly think when I'm not out there training, or I'm not out there trying to perform, I'm just kind of pushing the reset button and put myself in, relaxation mode and not trying to worry about the next thing that's going on, because I feel like that's kind of where I could go wrong. I just want to just do my best to kind of stay in the moment. And, I know I'm going to get my work done. I know that's a professional setting, and I know I'm going to get my work done and do that. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm, relaxed as possible when I'm not out there doing it, because it kind of freshens my mind a little bit. And that's where I kind of feel like I'm in a better position to be able to perform.
And if you're relaxed, does that improve? I mean, it's not all about distance in the NFL with punting, but if you've got a long punt to make, does it help if you're relaxed?
Yeah, I think so. If I'm out there, if I'm just relaxed before, and again, doing my absolute best to stay in the present, and not worrying about what I have to do in the next kind of 5 seconds, that's where I kind of feel like I'm at my best. If I go out there and I'm thinking about it, I know each play kind of builds up to the next, and it's still like preparing yourself, but that's different from thinking about what I actually have to do to just being in the present. And then when I run out on the field, that's when I go out and be like, okay, here we go. This is where I'm standing. This is what I've got to do. And I go from there. So that's just kind of how I see it, basically.
Yeah. So let's shift gears to your AFL career. When I ask, we'll come back to the NFL, but I just want to ask about the TAC Cup transition to the AFL. And the reason I ask about this is I actually played 2 games in the TAC Cup for the New South Wales ACT Rams, and it was 96. Okay. David Noble's coach. So it's cool. Quite a while ago, but I was playing country footy in New South Wales, and it was I want to say respectfully as possible, there were some occasional players, let's say. But the Danahers came from that league, so there were some decent players there. And I remember coming down to play in my first game in Canberra, and there was this guy I was playing on. He had probably 40-inch long arms. He was probably 2 inches taller than me. And I was like, what the hell? And I remember my first touch was the ball got kicked out from fullback, and it was offhand. So I grabbed the ball, and I thought I had about 1.5 meters. And I took about 2 or 3 steps, looked up, knew where I was going to go. I was about to kick, and these 40-inch arms just grabbed me and ragdolled me to the ground. And in that moment, I realised there was a giant chasm between country footy and the TAC Cup, and that physically I couldn't do anything about it. All that's done off the field. Mentally, I had to adjust and then think about, preempt where's every player? 10 o'clock, 4 o'clock? How many jumpers have I got around me that are my jumpers versus it? So I want to ask, when you come out of the TAC Cup and you go into the AFL, how big is the void, and what did you have to do to physically and mentally prepare yourself to play for the Saints?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think the first thing that comes to mind in terms of the transition that you have to identify is how fast-paced it is. TAC Cup, I guess you're playing against kids your age. You're playing against 17, 18-year-old kids that are trying to do the same thing as you and just make your way, and the bodies obviously aren't as big and things like that, whereas you're making the transition into the AFL and you've got guys that have played in the league for 10 years, ran the house down, know what they've got to do every time they've got their ball, like that, the ball in their hands, and it's just so fast-paced. It feels like you just don't have time. You've just got to make a quick decision straight away to be able to execute, and, that's kind of what you had to transition into and really kind of accustomed to, or learn to be accustomed to, I should say, and it probably took a little bit of time for me. To be honest, I still don't know if physically my body kind of was right there. When I got delisted, I was still only 22 at the time. And I feel like obviously your body kind of matures maybe more around the 24, 25 mark, really kind of matures into it. And, my body was still kind of developing, even though I'd spent 5 years in there. I had a few shoulder reconstructions and things. So my body was, still trying to fine tune and really get accustomed to it. But, I felt like my pace of play and that was pretty good. I felt like I adjusted to that very, very well. And I tried to, while I wasn't the fastest person out there or anything like that, I think that's what I relied on. I relied more on my, my skills and maybe a bit of my agility and just thinking about what I can do next, because that was my advantage. I knew I probably wasn't going to outrun 90% of the guys that are out there on that field. So that was kind of my difference. So I felt like that's what I think that's probably half the reason why I probably did get drafted in the end, because in the TAC Cup level, I was able to show that. But it was just more the body side of things that I really had to kind of adjust to and prepare for, because I wasn't the biggest kid coming in. I was 189 centimeters, but probably weighed 80 kilos going into the AFL system. So I had some work to do, and I finally got myself right up there. But then the body having to adjust to that kind of extra 10 kilos while being able to still run reasonably well was kind of took a little bit of time to adjust to. So that was probably the two biggest differences that I found, very quickly going from TAC Cup level to the AFL.
So if the speed is a big factor, does that, from a thinking point of view, do you change your way you think? Do you think about what you can do before you actually get the ball more? I guess you got to be careful with that, don't you? Because you can spend it before you've got it. But does it force you to think ahead?
Yeah, I think you just kind of have to play it out a little bit more than what you normally used to. In TAC Cup level, you did have the time where you could get the ball in your hands and then you could kind of look forward. Exactly. So you could kind of look forward and then do it that way. But then in the AFL, it's like you're kind of looking around a little bit to see where your options are, but knowing that you're going to get the ball, and then what, you're already looking what to, do with it next. But you obviously don't want to do that too much, because yes, you can kind of spend it before you've had it and then things absolutely change. But, that's another skill in itself, isn't it, really, is being able to look around to see where your options are. And then once you've got the ball in your hands, you know the decision that you're making and are able to execute it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges that I actually ended up getting 12 cut touches that day, and I 12, 15, something like that, and I kicked a goal. So it wasn't all bad. But one of the challenges was that I came down for 2 games and I didn't know anyone. So you don't have that connection and understanding of the players around you. Did it take a while for you to adjust to a new team and a bunch of teammates to get to know before you're ready to go out in the field?
Look, I guess both levels, to be honest. TAC Cup and the AFL, you kind of get the pre-season to be able to build relationships and speak to people and do it that way. So I guess that's kind of one good thing about the pre-season. You spend basically November through to March. You kind of working with these same group of guys with all for this common goal, and that's how you kind of build relationships. So I guess for me, that was probably a little bit easier, is that when I went out onto the field and got to play, I already knew who I was playing with, which was really, really good. So yeah, I guess from that aspect, that was kind of, that was a big bonus for me, is that I got to train with these guys for 5-6 months, and in practice and do match simulation and everything. So when we went out onto the field, you kind of knew what their game was, and they knew what mine was, and you can kind of work together on that, which was which was a bonus. It was really good.
Now, I understand you were a Saints supporter growing up as well, right?
I sure was, yeah.
I'm sorry about that. What is it, 19s? When was it? Well, my family actually were all. I was from Ballarat, so it was all. I had two uncles play for the Saints actually. So Uncle Jeff, Uncle John, if you're watching, shout out. But how did it feel to be drafted by the team you supported growing up?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was. I obviously wasn't expecting it. In the lead up, I hadn't really spoken to him much, to be honest. It was one chat at the AFL Combine very quickly for 10 minutes, and that was literally it. So I wasn't really expecting anything from him. So quite surprised, but obviously myself and the rest of the family were very, very happy. So that was certainly a dream come true, that's for sure.
And are your daughter's going to be a St Kilda supporter as well?
Yeah, most likely. My wife actually is a Saints supporter too, and her family was. So it probably looks to be that way. Maybe my wife's dad will. My father-in-law is a Richmond supporter, so maybe he might try and swing her, but we'll see what happens.
All right. So you started under Ross Lyon, and actually, I think at that time the Saints they might have made they were minor premiers one of the year.
We were flying. I think so they made the grand final the 2 years before that. Obviously lost to Geelong, and then the Pies, and then I got drafted after the grand final there.
So then, when you came in, it was a bit of a period of change. Ross Lyon went over to Fremantle. I think Scott Waters came in, was it? And was it Richo, or was it the other way around? One of those two. Yep. It was a bit of a changing time, and went through a pretty dry spell of wins. How do you, when you're going through that and you're in the team as a player, and there was maybe 4 or 5 wins in 1 year, how do you keep keep a positive mindset, keep objective, and get ready to go into each game with that hanging over your head?
Yeah, look, I think it's obviously very, very tough. That's where the mental side of things really kind of comes into it, doesn't it? And, as you said, I got drafted, and then in my first year under Ross, we started off, pretty poorly, but then kind of gathered ourselves and ended up making the finals that year. So, we still had a pretty solid season. And then after that, there was a bit of a change. And I still think Scott's first year, we had a pretty solid season. I think we only just missed out on finals. I think we ended up going, maybe 12-10 or something on the year, and still, 12 wins in a season you'd probably take, and the talent was still there. And then, obviously, some things turn around, free agency and whatnot, all those things kind of happen, and you lose players, and, things kind of, go astray a little bit, and it becomes a little bit tough. And, I think, in Scott's second year, we only won 5 or 6 games. And then, Alan Richardson's first year was probably the same. I think we may have only won 4, and very, very tough to have, the experienced guys that you have there. Most of them have gone, unfortunately. I think it was maybe Nick Rewalt, Lee Montagna were around, and, maybe Nick Dalsano for a little bit of that time too. But other guys that have been there for so long that were playing great footy had kind of gone. And you got these young guys that are trying to build up and not really sure what the direction of the club is going and what to do. And they're just trying to go out there and earn a spot in the 22, and going out there, not only losing, but, losing by a lot, really, some days were tough. The games were over by half time. And, I didn't get to play I didn't play a lot of those games, based on form a little bit, but injury as well just certainly took a toll on mine. And, I guess in a way, not being out there to try and, help them and do things and all that type of stuff is very, very hard. And you certainly see the guys in the, the group, they look up to the older guys, and sometimes you see the older guys that are, a little bit down in the dumps and they're not sure what to do after having such a successful period of time without obviously winning the ultimate, goal, but most of the part being quite successful, it is quite hard to do. So, it took a little bit of time and wait for those boys to mature up a little bit, the younger guys to kind of come through and, hopefully, it's been a little while since we've kind of got them back, back up there, but hopefully they've got the right guys now to be able to kind of go out there and do their thing.
Yeah. The reason I asked that question is that I took AFL didn't work out for me. I went into a career of business, and yep. I think in business there's a lot of analogies, and sport's a fantastic analogy for business. Yep. And it's sometimes, especially in a startup, you can just feel like you're doing everything week in, week out, yep. and nothing's happening for you to translate into wins on the field. And so I was interested to know, especially with media love drama as well. I imagine they probably want to put a bit of a focus on that and try to. I don't think they try to. I think they just it's how it manifests itself. But
yeah.
Does that add another layer of pressure? And what do you do to try to fight through that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we had a little bit going on. I mean, on Scott only lasted 2 years when I was there, and I thought that was obviously a little bit surprising, and kind of things went a little bit pear-shaped there. I don't really know the details to extent, but obviously, only having 2 years in the coaching position is probably not a good sign. So I guess the media kind of builds up on that a little bit, and maybe the smart decision in the end was the organisation coming out and saying we're in a rebuild phase, and we obviously got our veteran guys that want to stick around, but we also know that we've got young guys that we need to build up, and maybe that takes a little bit of pressure off from the media too, to just let us develop. And obviously you have performances that simply aren't good enough still, and the media are going to pounce on that, but maybe you didn't have as much pressure knowing that you've kind of identified that early and can kind of just work your way up without having too much pressure from external sources.
Do you think if it was another time and there wasn't the same turnover of coaches, or things were different? I've watched in prepping for this, I watched a few of your interviews, and you've clearly got a competitive edge to you, and you prepare yourself well, and there's a steely determination that sits behind the sort of cool, calm, collected Aussie. Mm-hmm. And I mean, look where you are now. So clearly there's a determination. Do you think in different circumstances it could have been different for your AFL career? Your body might have matured and had a longer career?
Yeah, I think, again, I'd just go back to kind of, I was this young guy that wasn't really sure what was going on, was it? And I didn't really grasp onto that until maybe a little bit later on. And, I had my best preseason in my last year at the Saints. So it was kind of, things were starting to kind of turn around maybe a little bit for me from maturity and identifying that, hey, actually, you have to put in the work to get yourself in the best position possible, and the body's starting to feel a little bit better. And, I guess with the amount of turnover that you have, it may have been a little bit different if I had the same coach basically throughout the whole time. So I had 3 coaches in 5 years at the Saints, and that is a lot, in the scheme of things. And who knows? I don't know whether they, with Richo coming in, whether he saw me as an older guy because I had been there for 4 years or something by the time he'd come in, or what. I'm really not too sure. But hindsight is a beautiful thing, and it is what it is. I'm in a position now where, as you said, like I have worked hard to get myself into the position that I am right now, and I wouldn't change it really for the most part. Would I have loved to have played 10 to 12 years in the AFL system and gone about it that way? Absolutely. I mean, that was the dream growing up, all my life. And circumstances could have been a little bit different. Head coaching roles could have been a little bit different. But that it is what it is. And I'm in this position right now, and that's the exciting part.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I think if we flip that question and Security were asking the question, they probably now look back and say, we probably got it wrong. So fair dues, That's a compliment. So end of 2015, I'm interested to know, because this is where I think it's more interesting, and the great analogy of sport comes in, especially for business, because at the end of 2015, the AFL, the time where the Saints comes to an end, you go from an environment where it's very structured. I imagine you've got sports psychologists, you've got nutritionists, you've got trainers, you've got everything around you to sort of create a structure. And you go out of that system and you've now got to set a structure, or you go out to no structure, depending on how you approach it. Well, how did you approach going into a completely different environment without that structure?
Tough, very, very tough. I went and played VFL at Williamstown Football Club. So I tried to obviously give myself another opportunity to get back into the system. And obviously VFL is so much different. There's only kind of part-time structure right there. You know, you're at night time doing your work basically. And so what do you do for the rest of the day when normally, you know, that's what you're doing during the day. Everything's structured. You've got things there basically 24/7. What do you do now? So basically, I just went out to try and find work. I met a couple of people and just wanted to kind of keep the cash flowing a little bit and still, again, have some form of structure. And I went out and did some labouring work, to be honest. I just found a buddy in the next 6 to 8 months. I just went out to building sites and just kind of grinded it out a little bit. And yeah, obviously that wasn't going to be for me long term, but I just knew that I needed to do something. One, to take my mind off the disappointment of not being at an AFL club anymore, but two, just to kind of keep everything in line and just stay focused on something else, I guess. And that's kind of the way I approached it. And then kind of when I figured out what I really wanted to do, I enrolled into university, and my long-term plan was obviously to become a teacher, and that's the great way I kind of looked at it. So enrolled into that in the middle of 2016. I did that, and then was playing at, as I said, at Williamstown part-time and doing uni study as well, and also doing a bit of work in the end at Brighton Grammar. My father-in-law was a teacher there, and they were in need of a coach, just to kind of work with the first 18 and the second 18 there. And the opportunity came up to be able to do that. So still being involved in football, but also having that teaching side of things too, working with kind of the younger guys coming through, I thought was something that I was very happy to be a part of, and satisfied with doing, for sure. So while, again, I was disappointed. I felt that maybe in the end I was able to find something pretty quickly, probably compared to most other players that don't really know what they want to do afterwards and like where do they go. I felt like maybe I was able to adjust fairly quickly, which is probably something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, well, you should be proud of that. I mean, the coming out of that system and then finding a new structure, and that was a lot to take on, because that's three different things you were doing all at the same time. How did you find or discover Pro Kick and fit all that in with everything that you were doing?
Yeah, no, good, great question. It was, it took a little bit of adjusting to, again, in terms of the when Nathan Chapman did his training programs and things like that, and basically. I wasn't fully committed to the Pro Kick situation a year out. I really didn't focus on it until probably the end of 2017, because I was still playing football at the time at Williamstown and things like that. And that was the main part, basically, is that I was still playing football. And once I kind of, gave that up and was like, okay, my sole focus is on training now with Pro Kick and trying to get over to the US. I guess it was a lot easier to kind of structure university, coaching, and, I guess the training aspect. So that's kind of where things became a little bit easier, and I was able to kind of focus on that fully. So, that's kind of how I looked at it afterwards. And, once I kind of focused on Pro Kick from the end of 17, everything kind of was a little bit smoother, for sure.
And that's a big decision, because you've gone from AFL kind of being everything you've known and done for quite a number of years to saying, I'm going to actually park that for the moment and go after Pro Kick. Must have taken a while to reach that decision.
Yeah, it did. I mean, honestly, it took 18 months. I went down for one kick, maybe in maybe May of 17. So it's still like it was 12 months kind of do I do it? Do I not do it? I'll do these other things in the meantime and things like that. And then actually made a commitment to go down. Had a couple of sessions here and there afterwards, but really that, again, just kind of, okay, this is my sole focus now. And, it wasn't just me making that decision. I had to, talk to my now wife, because obviously it was a big move. I didn't want to do it by myself. I wanted her to be a part of it too. And, so there was a lot of other factors that went into it. So that's probably why it took a little bit of extra time too, because there was other things that I need to kind of, think about first before I really went into it. And, in the end, we made the decision that it was, once in a lifetime kind of opportunity. We'd be silly not to. And that's when, like my full focus went into it.
So once you'd made that decision and your full focus went into it, as you say, what was your goal or what was your ambition at that moment?
My goal was, if I was going to do it, was to try and make it to the highest level possible. And that was to obviously make it to the NFL. And that was part of the process. Is like, do I just I don't want to just come over here and play like 3 years and say, I did it, and then just go home in terms of college football. I wanted to be committed to, I want to make a life out of it, and I know I can still be a professional athlete. Let's hone in on it and actually get the best out of yourself. And your focus is trying to make it to the highest level again. So that was from day dot. As soon as I committed to it, it's like, I'm not coming over here just to play a few years in college football and then go home. I'm coming over here to try and, get back into a professional system and see how I go.
And do you think that's played out? I'm a massive fan of visualization and saying, this is what I want to reach. By setting your goal or your ambition that high, do you think that's been a part of you making the NFL eventually? I mean, you could have easily just said, I want to get over there and play some college football, and if something else happens, great. But no, you said, I want to go straight to the NFL. Yeah.
It definitely was a driving factor for sure. I guess it was an easy decision to make in terms of that's what I want to do. That's my goal. And, as you said, visualization, it's funny it's funny that you bring it up. It's not something that you necessarily try and focus about, but when you say it out loud, that's exactly what it is. It's visualization, and, that's the goal. That's what you look forward to. That's what you put up on your wall type thing, to look at, every single day, saying this is what I want to achieve. So that's how you practice. You practice as if that's what you're going to do. If my goal was anything less, then maybe my practice wouldn't be as good. My training wouldn't be as good, and I'd just be, going through the motions maybe a little bit more. So, that's kind of how I looked at it.
Yeah, there's a great lesson in that. Next up was, you did get drafted into college football, but there was you had to grind to get there as well, right? You had to qualify from an academic point of view, right? Well, what did you have to do to get to Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, that's, as I mentioned, I had to start university, so I did that in 16. And when I did start it in 16, again, I hadn't really thought about it too much. It was in the back of my mind about the whole pro kick, but I wasn't really too sure. I had to go to university just as simply to get a degree to be a teacher. Either way, I had to do it. So, so I did that in the middle of 16 and started my degree. And then obviously the pro kick part came about later, and I got about 18 months in of study at home, which made me, I guess, eligible to go over to America and be part of Auburn University in Alabama. And the transition probably wasn't that smooth in terms of getting over here. Classes don't qualify in America that you've done in Australia and all that stuff, and transcripts are a bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest. But we eventually got over here and was able to continue my study for the most part. I had to kind of work around it a little bit, and I wasn't able to get into my teaching degree kind of straight off the bat, which was a little annoying. But eventually we got to that phase and, kind of almost completed it and kind of go from there. But, certainly it's not just about coming over and kicking a ball. There's a lot that kind of goes into it that Nathan Chapman and obviously his partner in Johnny Smith as well, that have to organise from a study point of view, that it takes long hours. It takes a long time. Some of it can be really simple. Some of it can be really complicated. And I just obviously want to make sure that people know it's not just about going over there and the guys have the skills to kick. It's, making sure that your studies are up to scratch too, because, they're just as important when you get over here.
Yeah, I think that's one of I love the NFL. It's one of the great things about it is that everyone sort of sees the moments. And like you said, there might only be 3 or 4 moments in a game, but actually no one sees what happens off the field and behind that to get there. It's probably the more interesting part.
Yeah, no doubt. No.
So you come over and you're in your mid-20s and you're going to college. Yeah. How was I imagine there's an age gap, right?
Oh, no doubt. I was 25 over here when I came over here, and you got 18-year-old kids in the locker room that don't know what the hell is going on. So it was pretty funny. The small room that I have with specialists, I think I was 25 and the next oldest was 20. So it was certainly a bit interesting, but it was still fun. Obviously the seniors and that are at the time 22, 23-ish. So, I guess the age gap there for the senior class isn't too bad. But knowing that I had 3 years and each year was going by, they're staying the same age in terms of the senior class, and I'm getting older. So by the time I finish, I'm 27 and the next class is still only 22. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. So that took a little bit of adjusting. But, still thoroughly enjoyed my time there and definitely wouldn't change it for anything.
You spent quite a while there in the study there. What did you learn, or what did you pick up about the game of NFL while you were there? Was it a really good learning ground?
Absolutely. Again, kind of what I said before, every moment counts. Every play counts. Every second counts. It's amazing when you continue to learn about the game and you're watching film from the offense and defense point of view sometimes, and you just see that there's 15 seconds on the clock in the fourth quarter, and in my mind, okay, the game's over. That's it. But the amount of times I've seen a touchdown be scored or teams get into position to be able to kick a field goal to win games or anything like that is just unbelievable, because literally every second matters, and organising plays and stuff to be able to do it is pretty cool. So it took a little bit of time. Half the time I had no idea what was going on, especially in my first year, because I got here in July and just basically went into camp and then started playing. That's how quick it happened. But then after the season finishes and you get to learn a little bit more about the game, it's actually pretty cool. I actually really enjoy it. It can be, it can obviously be a little bit slow, but knowing again that every play kind of matters is what makes it so entertaining.
I think if anyone watched the playoff series this year, you couldn't argue with that, could you?
Absolutely. That's a great point to make, for sure.
Phenomenal. I don't know if you saw. Mason Fletcher had a pretty good. They went quite deep. I don't know if you saw his strut in the game. What'd you make of that?
I sure did. Good for him. He did the ball really well, and they put him in a good spot. So good for him. That's great. And obviously, punters don't really get the chance to kind of celebrate too much. So I guess you got to enjoy it while you can. That's for sure. Yeah,
he definitely looked like he was having a good time. On that point, there's quite a lot of Aussies over here doing really well at the moment in the NFL even as well. So you've got a teammate, and my team's the 49ers, Mitch Wishnowsky. There's a lot of Aussies representing over here. Do you keep in touch with many of those guys?
I do as much as I possibly can. Obviously, the guys are quite busy doing their own thing and stuff. And, Mitch has got a kid now too. So he's obviously quite busy and stuff. But, you try and stay in touch with the guys as much as possible. And, obviously we all like to kind of get together maybe once a year and, have a kick together maybe towards the middle of the year and stuff. And, my coach back home, Nathan Chapman, normally comes over at the middle of the year to kind of do a few of the camps so the Australian guys can kind of get a little bit of exposure for college football. And that's when, a few of the NFL guys kind of catch up and we all get to work together a little bit. So it's pretty cool how it's done. Obviously, guys are living in all different places. Like Jordan Berry lives in Kentucky, and Mitch is obviously out in California and things like that. So guys are obviously a bit everywhere, so it can be a bit hard, and that's kind of why it's nice when Chappie comes over here. He has one spot that he gets to, and everyone tries to meet there. So it's good. It's good to be able to do that and learn off the other guys and try and continue to get better.
It's not just the NFL as well. I mean, Patty Mills, Josh Giddey. We've got the NBA is doing really well. There's a lot of really fantastic Australian athletes here in the US. So congrats. I mean, from it's so cool living here as an Aussie, watching so many Aussies doing great things.
No, I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
So from there, you go to the Detroit Lions. And what I want to ask you about here with the Detroit Lions is I'm generally curious more than anything, because I don't know the answer to this question. But if you're your backup punter to Jack Fox, and who I think actually had a pretty good, did he go play Pro Bowl?
He was a Pro Bowl.
So you're back up for a whole season. Do you actually play, or do you practice with the squad? How do you maintain focus and maintain match fitness and all that sort of thing when you're in the backup team?
Yeah, I mean, I still get to practice each week. I still get the line of scrimmage stuff and the ball snapped to me, and I've got to go out there and still kick well and that in practice, which is good. So that was great. That prepared me to be able to go into the next phase, and which was awesome. But obviously I didn't get to play a game all year. The only way I'd get to play, I think, is if obviously Jack went down injured, or obviously something happened maybe with COVID or anything like that, with the way times are. But so I just watched on a Sunday and got to see him do his thing. And he obviously had a fantastic year, and the competition during camp was unbelievable. I thought we kind of both set some really good standards, and he obviously was lights out and a Pro Bowler, very deservedly, and he did a phenomenal job. And not many guys kind of get to build a relationship and a friendship when they're competing with each other, but we were able to do that, which has been great. And we trained a few times throughout this off season, last season, which was great. So that's the kind of friendship that we've been able to build up, which is awesome, and just kind of talk about it and, help each other out when we want to. And he was great if he wanted any advice or anything like that for going into games or anything, which was awesome. And that's kind of maybe what I was there for a little bit if he needed it. And other than that, I just got to kind of kick throughout the week and make sure I was prepared and ready to go whenever they needed me. But knowing that, again, that, obviously, with the way that he played, I wasn't going to be staying there. It was preparing for what was the next phase of my career.
The US, or the world racquetball champion, I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, US guy, but he's undefeated for something like 7 or 8 years. And he actually couldn't train with anyone because he felt that if he trained with someone else, their standards weren't as high as him, so he'd bring him down. So training with Jack Fox, do you think that pushed you? No doubt. Absolutely. I think it pushed me, but I think I pushed him. That's kind of where we were at. That was why I think it was a really good training camp in the end. And that's probably why I think Detroit kept me on their practice squad too, because you don't really see many punters being kept on a practice squad for most of the time. 4 or 5 teams, maybe max, have one. But not only to be on their practice squad, but to kind of be on their practice squad all year with how he was playing. I think that kind of was based off a little bit how my training camp was in that year, and how I guess I kind of trained throughout the year too. So they wanted me to stick around and be part of it, which was maybe put me in a good position going forward. That's maybe why Philadelphia maybe saw it and, as an opportunity, and saw that I was capable of doing it, because they see me on a practice squad the whole year and things like that. So pushing each other was probably, a great thing, and put me in a great position. It must be frustrating though, right, to not play each week. Did you get frustrated at times? Yeah, I did. I mean, of course you're going to be frustrated, but I guess that's part of kind of the maturity and staying focused on
what your next opportunity is. So there's no doubt there's some frustration. You want to go out there and win the job and be the one playing. But the decision's been made, and you kind of can't get too hung up on it, because you're probably not going to put yourself in a better position going forward. You're going to be left kind of where you were, and that's not going to do you any good. So I think part of that too is that I was satisfied, and I was with the way I trained in my training camp. That was kind of probably made me feel a little bit better too, because I know that I had a really good camp, and it was neck and neck throughout the whole time, that right into it. So I felt like maybe either way they were going to be in a good position, the Lions, but they just went with Jack in the end. And in the end, it's a great decision. He had an outstanding year, and he's put 2 years together that have been really good. And I'm over here, grinding it out with Philly now, so it's all worked out.
Yeah, it certainly has. You kind of got this very good attitude towards it, and very logical way of looking at it. So to defeat the frustration and to look at it the way you have is clearly a sign of a champion. So the Philadelphia have then spotted you. How did that happen? Were you coached with someone who went across to Philadelphia, or how did you fall into the radar of Philly?
My agent has actually got a pretty good relationship with a couple of guys in their front office there, and just kind of put out the feelers a little bit in terms of what they were looking for. And obviously they had an Australian here previously in Cam Johnson, who had pretty good 3 seasons. And, Philly were kind of, not sure what they were going to do, because obviously salary cap and everything like that plays a part into it, and all those kind of issues that go. But obviously my agent kind of did his part in terms of, hey, this guy's been on the practice squad all year and had a really good training camp, obviously all those kind of things to try and put out there and help. And I guess that, one thing, led to another, and they kind of saw that, yeah, maybe we'll take a chance on me. And that's just purely how it worked out. I didn't really have any relationships with anybody there. I didn't know anybody at the Eagles. It was just purely my agent just kind of grinding it out for me, and putting in a good word. And, obviously kind of worked out really, really well.
Yeah. So 2021, so I guess, or 2021-22 season is the crowning moment. It must be an immense level of satisfaction, right, to finally get drafted across. But I've got a question. Is it the same situation? Do you have a backup kicker or a practice squad kicker at Philly that is pushing you now or competing with you?
No, currently and right throughout training camp when I was at Philly, I didn't have anybody. So, and to be honest, I was quite surprised. I mean, I hadn't played a game, so I was genuinely quite surprised that maybe they hadn't brought anybody else in. I'm not sure if it'll stay that way going into this one. My mindset's obviously, I fully expect them always to bring someone in. You're always going to expect competition. So, while it was a little bit different, the reality is that Philadelphia can still be looking at other teams and other guys. They just may not be there next to you in camp. So you still have to go out there and practice well. You still have to go out there and, perform well in the preseason games, because who knows, they might like some other guy on film that's played in the preseason games, and they might bring him over. So that's the way you're going to look at it. You just got to always feel that there's always some form of competition. You have to go out there and execute and do well, and that's just the way I see it. So it was nice to not have that someone right next to you. And then going into games and things like that, you start to build a little bit more confidence as each game goes by. But again, it's the same thing. You kind of just still need to kind of perform, because at any moment they can possibly tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, we're going to bring this other guy in, and thanks for your time. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and that's one of the differences of the NFL, or even just American sport. Contracts are probably not worth the paper they're written on.
Yeah,
right. Exactly. So. Yeah. So I mean, must have been an enormous year. How did you enjoy your crowning year in the NFL, your debut year in the NFL as a starting kicker?
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. I had a great time. I had a great group of guys. The players on the team were, so well connected and, got along with all of them really, really well. And, my, specialist group from our kicker and long snapper were a great, a couple of guys that made life so much easier for me. And, I thoroughly enjoyed the first season. I wouldn't, have it any other way. It's been amazing. And obviously do have the Eagles organisation to thank for giving me the opportunity to be able to do that. Taking a chance on a guy that never played a game before is a bit risky, but hopefully I was able to fulfill their needs and can continue that going forward. And, sometimes you want some particular punts and that you want back and things like that. But for the most part, I'm, really happy and satisfied with the way I perform, but also, having a little helping hand and our kicker, Jake Elliott, who had his best season, I think, for a little while, which was cool. And I feel like me having a part in that is pretty special, and hopefully we can kind of continue that.
Well, actually, I want to ask you about that because I'm a 49ers fan, which is a funny story in itself. I had a girlfriend when I was in like year 6 or something like that, and she was called Susan Finley, and it was SF. So that's the only reason. I have no other connection to the 49ers other than that. But anyway, it just stuck. But this year, in the game against the Rams, Robbie Gould, he had to, because Mitch got injured. So he had to come on and punt. And I think he did a 49-yard punt in the game and practically won the game. Special teams won the game for them that day. So I want to know, in reverse of that, do you practice place kicking or do you practice any other positions?
I have a couple of times on place kicking. Let's just say it doesn't really go well at the moment. I've got some work to do. The kickoff side of things, actually, I've worked on a fair bit and feel like I'm actually going all right at. So, obviously, if I've got some work to do from the place kicking and trying to kick some field goals, but that's still pretty cool to try and work on. But from actual like kickoffs and things like that to get the game started, I've actually got my head around and actually going pretty well with it. So, if our kicker does go down, half of it I'll be ready for. The other half I may have to kind of keep working on and see how we go.
So if called on, you're ready to step up.
Yeah, I'll step up and see what I can do.
And even if you're not kicking, you've still got a big role to play because you got to put that thing in position. How do you prepare for that? Because you've got like a split second to get it right, catch it, put it in spot.
Yeah, I guess like we practice so much. Obviously everyone kind of just sees the actual play itself, and it's like, it's obviously a big occasion, which it is, don't get me wrong. But again, we just go back to how much you practice it. So myself and, Rick, the long snapper, practice all throughout the week, hundreds of snaps, getting that thing right, getting that rhythm, making sure the ball's in the right spot for Jake to be able to kick. But then also we literally do it on the sideline before we go out there. So it's like, we've already had 15, 20, 30 practices before we literally run out there and do it. So, full of confidence kind of going out there, knowing that we've got it and that's all there is to it. So it's, when you do really well, I think, and you start to, see the labor, the hard work from all the labor and stuff that you put in, the execution, starts to come around a little bit more. You just build confidence from that. And I think that's what happened with Jake throughout the year is that obviously it's a new person in holding the ball for him. So kickers can obviously always be a little bit nervous about that. But, I think with me being able to show I was more than capable of being able to do it, gives him more confidence, and then everything is just so smooth from there. And that's something I'm really grateful for. And as much as punting's obviously vital, that's probably in a way maybe a little bit more because it's the fact that points are going on the board every single time. So I pride myself on making sure that that's still there and we can go out there and execute and have a part in winning the game. So earlier on, you said to me that your goal was to reach the NFL. I mean, you more than reached the NFL. I want to ask you about this as well. You played in a playoff and against the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And did you get to talk to him? Did you come across him on the field? What an experience! How did that feel? I left him alone though. I don't know if he would speak to someone like me too much. I just left him alone. But it's pretty cool to see the greatest of all time, honestly, do his thing and see him in live. And while he's absolutely giving us an ass whooping, it's still kind of pretty cool to see. And that's obviously one of the things that I'll obviously never forget for sure is that, while we obviously we wanted to go out there and win that game and play well, it's still pretty cool to see guys like that actually do their thing right in front of your eyes there. So, that was a cool experience. Obviously, it was a tough day for us. We really kind of struggled, and they kind of, showed their willpower a little bit and showed all their weapons and stuff like that. But playing in a playoff was pretty cool, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't for the Antonio Brown situation, they might have gone a bit deeper. I know they had injuries, but that one I think rattled them a little bit in the end.
Yeah.
So I was talking before about your goal. You got to the NFL. You're played in a playoff now alongside the GOAT. What's the goal today? What's the goal now?
Oh, for me, it's just making sure I get around for year two. As I said before, it's a tap on the shoulder any time. They can say to you, hey, look, we're going to look somewhere else, or we're going to bring someone else in to compete. So, it's about going around for year two. So preparing for that again. And the clock's already started basically in terms of preparation for that. So that's how it works. This is where you really kind of grind it out, and you're on your own for the most part, being able to get the work done and put yourself in a good position to go out there and be part of year two, and hopefully the same thing happens, if not even better things happen. So that's just where my head's at right now. Satisfied, obviously, with the way the first year went, but knowing that there's a lot more to give. And, that's basically it.
Pro Bowl 2023?
That's kind of the aim. We'll see how it goes. But, just we'll worry about that once we make the team, I think, and then we can have our eyes firmly set on hopefully a Pro Bowl, if not as a team, a Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. I'm sure it's gonna happen. So, wrapping up, I've got a question that I want to ask, which is, from everything that's happened in your career right through to today, what's 2 to 3 things, or maybe 3 or 4 things that you'd take with you, pass on to your daughter, as these are the things that you need to learn in life and need to live your life by?
Yeah, I think the easiest one that I can come up with is just not giving up. There's always going to be setbacks. There's always going to be something that's going to be put in front of you, an obstacle that's going to be put in front of you that's going to be challenging. But don't turn away from it. Hit it head on, and you'll get to the other side, basically. I think if I didn't have that in me, there's no way I'd obviously be here right now. I don't know what I'd be doing, to be honest, but I just think it's about not giving up. I think that's just the most, important part of it. That obviously comes with a little bit of resilience and things like that you can build on, and stuff that you learn, and that puts you in a good position. But I don't even know if I could come up with maybe 2 or 3 other ones, because I just think that's just that's so important to me. It's just not about, giving up on anything or any of your goals, no matter how long that it does take. If you are willing to put in the time and effort for it, it will come. It will. So that's kind of what I just think about every day.
Thanks for that. That's good advice. Well, I just want to take a moment to say thanks for being such a great example, and also for giving all of us Aussies over here, or even back in Australia, so much joy to watch so many great athletes, and you're one of them. So thanks for that. And when life deals you lemons, you've turned it into lemonade. So that's a great example to set for your daughter and for everyone going forward. So thanks for that, and thanks for joining me on the show. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to chat with you.
No worries. Thanks for having me, Rob. I appreciate it.
Wow, I love interviewing athletes, and especially an athlete like Arryn, who's been so committed, gone through the tough times and come out, and now he's triumphing in the NFL. Sport is such an incredible analogy for life and for business, and Arryn's story is no exception. I hope you liked it. If you did, please head on over and give me a review on Spotify or on SoundCloud. Share it on social media so as many people as possible can hear Arryn's story, and please just tell your friends about it as well. If you like the show, I've got so much more cool guests coming up. I've got an episode on sleep with a sleep expert, how to optimize and give yourself the best foundation to take on every single day. I've got a fantastic performance coach coming on to give us some advice and what she's really been focusing on learning about in the last 18 months. I've also got a triple Olympian coming up in the next few weeks. So if you liked it, please head on over and subscribe on Spotify or on SoundCloud, or if you want to hear about it first, then sign up to the Grind Equity subscriber list. So head on over to grind-equity.com and subscribe on the website. Thanks for listening today. Go out there, keep grinding, and never ever give up.